There is a kind of loneliness in upstate New York that does not look empty at first. It looks like a main street with 3 open stores, a mountain road with no headlights behind you, a lake town after the summer people leave, or a village where the school, diner, gas station, and post office carry more emotional weight than entire neighborhoods do in bigger cities. These are 20 of the loneliest towns in upstate New York, ranked not only by size or distance, but by atmosphere. Some are border towns, some are mountain towns, some are old industrial places that lost their purpose, and some are beautiful enough to make loneliness feel like a choice. The real question is not why they feel so isolated. The real question is why people stay. Number 20 is Whitehall, Washington County, located at the southern end of Lake Champlain, near the Vermont border. Here is what makes Whitehall feel lonely. This is a town that once mattered because water mattered. Before highways taught people to ignore it, Whitehall sat at a crucial connection between Lake Champlain, the Champlain Canal, and the long route between New York and Canada. Boats moved through, soldiers moved through, goods moved through. For a while, the town had the nervous energy of a place that knew it was part of something larger. Today, Whitehall feels like a place left standing after the traffic changed direction. The canal is still there. The old buildings are still there. The hills still rise around the village. But the movement that created the town no longer fills it the same way. You can walk through parts of Whitehall and feel that strange silence old transportation towns develop when the world stops needing their exact location. People stay because Whitehall is not as empty as it first appears. It has water, mountains, history, and a stubborn local identity. It is close to Vermont, close to Lake George, close to the Adirondacks, and yet cheaper and rougher than the places tourists usually choose. Families stay because routes are not easy to pull up. Others stay because they like a town where people notice when a new truck parks on the street. The trade-off is perception. Outsiders may see decline before they see character. Locals see the canal, the old streets, the quiet beauty, and the fact that the town has survived more than one economic era. A canal town at the edge of Lake Champlain, lonely because the traffic moved on, still inhabited by people who know that being overlooked is not the same as being finished. Number 19 is Deposit, Delaware, and Broome counties. Located along the west branch of the Delaware River, close to the Pennsylvania line, Deposit has the kind of loneliness that comes from being on the edge of several maps at once. It sits where the Catskills begin to fade into the southern tier, where New York leans toward Pennsylvania, and where the river feels more important than the road. The village has old storefronts, steep hills, fishing water, and that borderland feeling of a place people pass through on their way somewhere else. The name itself comes from timber history. Logs were once deposited here before being floated down the Delaware River. That tells you almost everything about the original purpose of the place. Deposit existed because resources needed to move. Wood came out of the hills. People built around the river. Then the economy changed, and the town had to learn how to remain after its original reason weakened. People stay because the river still gives the place meaning. Anglers know the water. Families know the back roads. The hills are beautiful in a quiet, unpolished way. Housing is more reachable than in the trendy Catskills to the east. There is space here, and space matters to people who do not want their life measured by traffic, rent, and noise. The trade-off is distance. Jobs can be limited. Young people often leave. Winters can make the valley feel closed in. But those who stay often do so because Deposit offers something bigger towns cannot offer anymore. The feeling that life is still tied to land, water, and people who remember your name. A river village on the edge of the Catskills, lonely because its old timber purpose is gone, still loved because the Delaware keeps moving past it like a promise. Number 18 is Prattsville, Greene County, located in the northern Catskills, along Schoharie Creek. Prattsville is a town that knows what it means to be nearly erased. In 2011, flooding from Tropical Storm Irene devastated the community, tearing through homes, businesses, and streets with a violence that people there still remember physically. Before that, Prattsville was already small and isolated, tucked into the Catskill landscape along a creek that gives beauty and danger in equal measure. After the flood, the loneliness became heavier, because the town was not just quiet, it was wounded. But Prattsville did not disappear. That is the reason it belongs on this list. There are places where disaster becomes the final chapter. Here, people came back, rebuilt, cleaned mud out of rooms, reopened doors, and kept going in a valley that had shown them exactly how fragile everything was. The town has a severe kind of pride, because survival is not theoretical here. It is visible in repaired buildings and in the way people talk about before and after. People stay because the Catskills are not simply scenery to them. They are home. The mountains hold memory. The creek is both threat and companion. Artists, locals, retirees, and families share a place that feels too small for indifference. When something happens in Prattsville, people know. The trade-off is vulnerability. Remote beauty comes with limited services, hard weather, and water that can rise faster than anyone wants to believe. But for those who remain, leaving would mean letting the flood decide the town's future. A Catskill town nearly broken by water, lonely because recovery is quiet work, still alive because the people who stayed refused to let disaster have the last word. Number 17 is Stamford, Delaware County, located in the northern Catskills, once known as the Queen of the Catskills. Stamford feels lonely because it remembers being grander than it is now. In the resort era, this village had hotels, boarding houses, summer guests, mountain air, and the confidence of a place people traveled to for health and escape. The railroad helped bring visitors into the hills. The views were a selling point. The altitude was part of the cure. For a while, Stamford was not a forgotten mountain village. It was a destination. Then the resort economy changed. Rail travel declined. Vacation habits shifted. The old hotels aged, closed, burned, or were repurposed. What remains is a village with beautiful bones, broad mountain views, and a faint sense that it is still waiting for people who stopped coming a long time ago. That is the loneliness of Stamford. It is not empty. It is echoing. People stay because the beauty is still real. The mountains did not leave when the hotels did. The air is still sharp. The main street still has enough structure to feel like a town, and not just a scattering of houses. Artists, old families, workers, and newcomers looking for quiet all find different versions of the same appeal. Stamford offers room to breathe without being completely cut off from the Catskill region around it. The trade-off is that nostalgia does not pay every bill. Small towns with resort pasts often struggle between preservation and practicality. Locals know the old reputation, but they live with the present reality. A former mountain resort village with a royal nickname and a quieter crown now. Lonely because its guests faded. Still loved because the hills never stopped being beautiful. Number 16 is Andes, Delaware County, located in the western Catskills, surrounded by farms, ridges, and old roads. Andes is lonely in a different way. It is not bleak. In fact, it can be almost painfully pretty. The village has a small main street, old buildings, galleries, farm country, and mountain roads that look especially beautiful in autumn. But the loneliness comes from scale. Step outside the center, and the landscape opens into long stretches of fields, woods, stone walls, and houses set far apart. It is the kind of place where silence does not feel accidental. It feels built into the land. The town carries Revolutionary War history, farming history, and the complicated modern identity of many Western Catskill communities. There are old families who have been connected to the area for generations. There are newer arrivals drawn by beauty, space, and the dream of a slower life. There are second homes, working farms, weekend visitors, and residents who live through February when the charm has frozen hard. People stay because Andes offers a rare balance. It is quiet, but not dead. Beautiful, but not fully polished. Remote, but not impossible. There is a sense of community that depends on showing up, because in a small place, presence matters. The farmer's market, the school, the cafe, the fire department, the local events, all of them carry more weight than they would in a larger town. The trade-off is tension. The same beauty that keeps locals rooted also attracts people with more money, changing the housing market and the character of the area. Staying can become harder precisely because the town is desirable. A quiet Catskill village surrounded by lonely hills, loved because it still feels human-sized, feared because discovery can make a place too expensive for the people who kept it alive. Number 15 is Harrisville, Lewis County, located near the western Adirondack foothills, close to the edge of Fort Drum country. Harrisville feels like a town at the end of the regular world. The village sits near lakes, woods, and roads that lead deeper into the North Country. It is not far from military movement, logging country, hunting camps, and winter landscapes that can make distance feel twice as long. This is not the curated Adirondacks of lakefront resorts and polished main streets. Harrisville is rougher, quieter, and more working class. The loneliness here is seasonal and practical. Winter changes everything. Snow narrows the roads, dark comes early, and the landscape can feel emptied out except for porch lights, plow trucks, and the glow of small stores. In summer, the nearby lakes soften the mood. People fish, camp, ride, hunt, and gather in the way rural communities do when good weather finally arrives. But even then, Harrisville never feels crowded in the way famous upstate towns do. People stay because the town offers access to a life built around land and familiarity. Hunting camps, family properties, local schools, fire departments, and neighbors who know one another create a network that outsiders may not see. For some people, that network is worth more than convenience. They do not want a place where everything is available. They want a place where people are accountable to each other. The trade-off is opportunity. Work can be limited. Entertainment is what you make yourself. Distance from larger services is real. But those who stay often prefer the honest difficulty of Harrisville to the anonymous ease of bigger places. A North Country village near lakes and deep woods, lonely because winter and distance press close, still chosen because belonging can matter more than convenience. Number 14 is Fort Covington, Franklin County. Located on the Canadian border, north of the Adirondacks, Fort Covington has a border town loneliness that feels different from mountain isolation. It sits near the St. Lawrence River country, close enough to Canada that the map feels porous, but far enough from major New York cities that it can feel forgotten by the state it belongs to. The land is flatter here than the Adirondacks, with farms, long roads, cold wind, and a northern light that makes winter feel especially wide. The town's history is tied to conflict, crossing, and frontier geography. Its name points back to military history, but its everyday identity is quieter. Farms, families, border routines, school events, snow, and the slow rhythm of a rural community near the edge of the country. Places like Fort Covington rarely appear in travel fantasies about New York. That omission is part of what makes it feel lonely. People stay because the borderland has its own loyalty. Families are connected across roads, farms, churches, and generations. The cost of living can be lower than in more famous regions. The landscape gives room. The community gives recognition. In a place this small, anonymity is difficult, and for some people, that is exactly the comfort. The trade-off is remoteness from opportunity. A person may love the town and still have to leave for work, college, medical care, or a different future. That is the central ache of many North Country communities. Love and practicality do not always point in the same direction. A quiet town near the Canadian line, lonely because it sits at the edge of both state and nation, still loved because edges create their own kind of belonging. Number 13 is Port Henry, Essex County. Located on Lake Champlain, beneath the eastern Adirondack slopes. Port Henry feels lonely because it faces something enormous. Lake Champlain stretches out in front of it. Vermont rises across the water, and the Adirondacks press behind it. The village has one of the most dramatic settings in upstate New York, but beauty alone does not prevent a place from feeling abandoned by time. This was iron country. Mining, industry, railroads, and lake shipping once gave the area a harder purpose. When those industries faded, the town was left with views that could break your heart and an economy that could not always match them. The loneliness of Port Henry is visible in the contrast between the landscape and the quiet streets. There are houses with lake views that would cost fortunes elsewhere, old commercial buildings that remember busier days, and a waterfront that feels both powerful and underused. The place has a mythic local oddity as well, with stories of Champ, the Lake Champlain monster, giving the town a strange folklore identity. People stay because the setting gets under the skin. Lake Champlain is not decorative. It shapes weather, mood, memory, and identity. Families stay because this is home. Others stay because they can live near mountains and water without entering the polished economy of more famous lake towns. There is dignity in a place that has not been fully remade for outsiders. The trade-off is that industrial memory can be heavy. A beautiful view does not erase lost jobs, but locals know Port Henry is more than what left. A Lake Champlain town beneath the Adirondacks, lonely because industry faded, still loved because some views become part of a person's blood. Number 12 is Lowville, Lewis County, located in the Black River Valley near the Tug Hill Plateau. Lowville is not the smallest town on this list, but loneliness is not always about population. Sometimes it is about weather, distance, and the feeling that the rest of the state has no idea what life is like where you are. Lowville sits near Tug Hill, a region known for heavy lake effect snow, deep winter, and rural communities that operate by a different seasonal clock than the rest of New York. The village is a county seat, which gives it more services than many surrounding places. There are stores, schools, government offices, and enough activity to keep it from feeling abandoned. But drive a few minutes outward and the landscape opens into farms, forests, snowmobile country, wind, and long winter roads. Lowville becomes the center of a large, quiet world. People stay because it functions as an anchor. In rural places, a county seat matters. It is where people go for errands, court, school events, appointments, and familiar faces. It holds the region together in ways outsiders may not appreciate. There is also a strong culture of self-reliance here. People know winter will come hard. They prepare, adapt, complain, laugh, and continue. The trade-off is that the same winter identity that gives the area pride can also exhaust people. Snow is beautiful until it is work. Distance is peaceful until it becomes inconvenience. Lowville asks residents to accept both sides. A North Country anchor town near Tug Hill, lonely not because nothing happens there, but because so much of what happens is shaped by snow, distance, and a region most of New York barely understands. Number 11 is North Creek, Warren County, located along the Upper Hudson River, near Gore Mountain. North Creek has a complicated loneliness because tourists do come here. Skiers know Gore Mountain. Rafting companies know the Hudson River. History. People know this is where Theodore Roosevelt learned President McKinley was dying and began the journey that would make him president. On paper, North Creek should not feel lonely at all. Yet outside the ski rush and summer activity, the hamlet can feel like a mountain place waiting between seasons. That is the secret of many Adirondack communities tied to recreation. They are busy in bursts, then quiet in long stretches. Main streets that feel alive on a winter weekend can feel almost suspended on a gray weekday in April. The mountains remain, but the visitors vanish. Locals live in the in-between. People stay because North Creek offers a rare relationship with the outdoors. The Hudson is not an idea here. It is water moving through town. Gore is not just a resort. It is part of the local economy and local weather conversation. Trails, woods, skiing, rafting, and mountain roads are daily realities. For people who love that life, the seasonal uncertainty is worth it. The trade-off is dependence on visitors. A town can resent tourists and need them at the same time. Jobs, restaurants, shops, and rentals all depend on a flow of people who do not carry the same winter bills or shoulder season quiet. A mountain hamlet on the Upper Hudson, lonely between tourist seasons, still chosen by people who would rather live close to the river and the slopes than far from themselves. Number 10 is Downsville, Delaware County, located where the East Branch of the Delaware River meets the Pepacton Reservoir. Downsville is lonely because water changed its world. The Pepacton Reservoir, built as part of New York City's water supply system, reshaped the surrounding valley and erased several communities that once stood where drinking water now rests. Downsville survived, but it lives beside a landscape marked by absence. Reservoir towns have a different emotional atmosphere. The water is beautiful, but it also represents loss. The village is small, quiet, and surrounded by hills. The reservoir brings fishermen, scenic drivers, and people who understand the appeal of open water beneath Catskill ridges. But it also creates restrictions. This is not a lake town in the carefree sense. The water belongs to a system larger than the town, a system designed to serve a city far away. People stay because the place has depth. The East Branch, the reservoir, the hills, the family histories, and the memory of drowned villages all give Downsville a seriousness that prettier tourist towns sometimes lack. Life here can be peaceful, but it is not shallow. Residents choose it because they value space, continuity, and a landscape that tells the truth about sacrifice. The trade-off is limited growth. Watershed rules, distance, and terrain shape what the town can become. But for many locals, that limitation also protects the character of the place. Downsville is not trying to become a resort. It is trying to remain itself. A Catskill reservoir village shaped by water and absence. Lonely because whole communities disappeared nearby. Still loved because survival beside loss creates a fierce kind of home. Number 9 is Star Lake, St. Lawrence County, located in the western Adirondacks within the town of Fine. Star Lake has the feeling of a place deep inside the map. The name sounds gentle, almost dreamy, but the reality is more rugged. This is western Adirondack country, far from the glamour of Lake Placid and far from the easy weekend routes from New York City. The roads run through forest, water, and former mining country. The distances feel real. This area once depended heavily on industry, especially mining and related work. When those jobs weakened or disappeared, the communities around Star Lake had to face the same question many rural places face. What remains after the work that built the town no longer supports it? The answer is complicated. There is natural beauty. Yes, lakes, woods, hunting, fishing, and quiet. But beauty does not automatically create paychecks. People stay because Star Lake offers a form of solitude that some residents do not want to trade away. The lake itself gives identity. The woods provide recreation and rhythm. Families stay because their histories are tied to the area. Others stay because the Western Adirondacks feel more honest to them than the postcard Adirondacks. This is not a stage set. It is a working landscape that has had to endure. The trade-off is economic fragility. Remote towns can be rich in beauty and poor in options. That contradiction defines Star Lake. For some people, it becomes a reason to leave. For others, it becomes the reason staying matters. A western Adirondack Lake community, lonely because industry faded and the tourist spotlight shines elsewhere. Still chosen because quiet water and deep woods can become a life, not just a view. Number 8 is Cranberry Lake, St. Lawrence County, located near one of the largest lakes in the Adirondacks. Cranberry Lake feels lonely in the way true Adirondack places do. Not empty, but vast. The lake is large, the forest is larger, and the human settlement feels small against both. This is not a town built around constant nightlife or easy convenience. It is a place built around water, cabins, camps, trailheads, and the knowledge that the woods are not decoration. They are the dominant fact. The hamlet has long been tied to outdoor life. Paddling, fishing, hiking, camping, hunting, and snowmobiling shape the rhythm of the year. The Cranberry Lake 50 Trail gives serious hikers a loop around the area, but most visitors still experience only a fraction of the landscape. The rest belongs to people who know where the quiet coves are, which roads freeze badly, and how different the lake feels after Labor Day. People stay because Cranberry Lake offers a kind of freedom that is hard to explain to someone who needs constant access. Space is the attraction. Silence is the attraction. A night sky with fewer interruptions is the attraction. Residents accept that they may drive farther for services because they wake up close to something most people only visit briefly. The trade-off is isolation. When weather turns, the same beauty that drew you in can make you feel cut off. Seasonal economies bring uneven income. The winters are not romantic every day, but the people who stay usually know exactly what they are choosing. A remote Adirondack Lake community surrounded by forest, lonely because nature is bigger than the settlement, still loved because some people do not want the human world to feel too large. Number 7 is Raquette Lake, Hamilton County, located in the central Adirondacks within the town of Long Lake. Raquette Lake is lonely even when it has visitors because the lake carries a deep Adirondack stillness. Great camps, boat access, old families, summer people, year-round residents, and forested shoreline all share the same water. But the place never feels fully conquered. The lake is too large, too broken by bays and islands, too connected to older Adirondack stories. In the Gilded Age, wealthy families built elaborate camps around lakes like this, trying to turn wilderness into private retreat. That history still lingers. But Raquette Lake is not only a wealthy retreat, it is also a small community where year-round life continues after the boats are stored and the seasonal homes go dark. That is when the loneliness becomes visible. The lake remains, but the human noise drops away. People stay because the place is beautiful in a way that resists ordinary measurement. Living near Raquette Lake means accepting inconvenience in exchange for intimacy with water, forest, and season. It means knowing the lake in fog, storm, ice, black fly season, summer brightness, and autumn quiet. Visitors may know the postcard. Locals know the calendar. The trade-off is that resort history can divide a place. Seasonal money and local reality do not always align. A town can be famous to outsiders and still difficult for the people who keep it running. A central Adirondack Lake community with Grand Camp history and year-round quiet. Lonely, because the summer world disappears. Still chosen because the lake becomes more real after the visitors leave. Number 6 is Long Lake, Hamilton County. Located deep inside the Adirondack Park. Long Lake is one of those places where the name feels like a description of life itself. The lake stretches through the town, long and calm in places, wind-marked in others, surrounded by forest and mountains that make every route feel deliberate. This is not a place you accidentally end up unless you took a wrong turn for a very long time. It sits deep enough in the Adirondacks that distance becomes part of the identity. The town is small, but it carries more cultural weight than its size suggests. It has hotels, camps, guides, seaplanes, paddlers, snowmobilers, old Adirondack families, and visitors who return every year like migration. Yet outside the high season, Long Lake can feel intensely quiet. Storefront lights matter. A diner matters. A gas pump matters. In a place this remote, ordinary services become community infrastructure. People stay because Long Lake offers belonging within a large landscape. The Adirondack Park is protected on a scale that makes most American parks look small. And living inside that park means accepting rules, beauty, limits, and privilege all at once. Residents stay because they love the water, the mountains, the independence, and the fact that life here has not been fully absorbed by suburban sameness. The trade-off is that remoteness is expensive in hidden ways. Fuel, repairs, medical care, winter heating, and travel all take planning. Beauty does not remove logistics. It intensifies them. A deep Adirondack town wrapped around a long lake. Lonely because every road reminds you how far in you are. Still loved because distance is exactly what protects its soul. Number 5 is Indian Lake, Hamilton County. Located at the meeting of routes 28 and 30 in the central Adirondacks. Indian Lake feels like the kind of town where the mountains decide the pace. It sits among lakes, rivers, forest, and long roads, with no need to pretend it is convenient. The community is small, spread out, and surrounded by public land and wild water. The Hudson River forms part of the town's eastern boundary, and the area has long been tied to guiding, rafting, hunting, fishing, and the practical culture of Adirondack life. The loneliness here is not dramatic. It is steady. It appears in the distance between houses, the quiet after dark, the long winter, and the way locals talk about driving as if distance were just another household chore. Visitors may see the town as a base for adventure. Residents know it as a place where adventure and inconvenience share the same road. People stay because Indian Lake has a strong sense of itself. It is not trying to become Lake Placid. It does not need a luxury identity to feel valuable. It has community events, outdoor traditions, local pride, and a landscape that gives people enough reason to endure the hard parts. Some stay because their families are rooted there. Others arrive because they are tired of places where everything is easy, but nothing feels deep. The trade-off is aging and access. Small Adirondack towns often struggle to keep young families, workers, and services. The beauty that attracts people can also make housing and livelihoods complicated. A central Adirondack town of lakes, rivers, and long roads. Lonely because the wilderness presses close. Still chosen because some people would rather live with difficulty than live without depth. Number 4 is Speculator, Hamilton County. Located on Lake Pleasant, in one of the least densely populated counties in New York. Speculator sounds like a place from an old map, and in some ways, it feels like one. The village sits beside Lake Pleasant, surrounded by Adirondack forest, small roads, seasonal homes, and a quiet that becomes especially intense outside summer. It is tiny, but it has a name people remember because it feels slightly mysterious, as if the town itself is watching the lake and waiting. The loneliness of Speculator comes from scale. Hamilton County has very few people spread across a large area, and Speculator is one of its more recognizable communities. That tells you something. In another county, it would be a small village. Here, it functions as a center. That makes daily life feel both intimate and exposed. Everyone needs the same limited services. Everyone notices change. People stay because Speculator offers a direct relationship with the Adirondacks. Lake Pleasant is not an amenity. It is part of the emotional structure of the town. Snowmobiling, boating, hiking, fishing, and seasonal rhythms shape the year. Some residents rely on visitors. Others simply tolerate them. But nearly everyone understands that the lake and forest are the reason the place exists in its current form. The trade-off is that small places can feel smaller in winter. Seasonal businesses reduce hours. Homes go dark. The social world contracts. But for locals who love it, that contraction is not only loss, it is also relief. A tiny Adirondack village on Lake Pleasant, lonely because it is small even by remote county standards, still loved because the lake gives the silence a reason. Number 3 is Denning, Ulster County, located in the deep Catskills, west of the Ashokan Reservoir and north of the Rondout watershed. Denning is one of those Catskill towns that makes you understand how misleading maps can be. On a map, it is not that far from places people know. In reality, the roads twist through forest, valleys, and watershed land in a way that makes the town feel much farther away. Denning does not have the polished village center tourists expect from the Catskills. It is more dispersed, more wooded, and more private. This is mountain country shaped by water, public land, old farms, and the long shadow of New York City's reservoir system. The loneliness feels dense here, not empty. Trees press close. Houses appear and disappear behind bends in the road. Trailheads lead into serious Catskill terrain. The landscape does not perform. It simply surrounds. People stay because Denning offers privacy that is difficult to find in the modern Hudson Valley and Catskills. For some, the appeal is land. For others, it is quiet, hunting, hiking, family history, or the simple fact that no one bothers you unless there is a reason. In a world of constant visibility, Denning's invisibility can feel like wealth. The trade-off is limited convenience. There is no fantasy version of rural life here, where every need is 10 minutes away. Weather, roads, services, and isolation have to be accepted as part of the bargain. A deep Catskill town without a polished postcard center, lonely because the forest and reservoirs keep it quiet, still chosen because privacy has become one of the rarest luxuries in New York. Number 2 is Hardenburgh, Ulster County, located in the western Catskills, one of the most sparsely populated towns in the region. Hardenburgh may be the loneliest place in the Catskills that most New Yorkers have never heard of. It covers a large mountainous area, but the population is tiny. Much of the town is forest, watershed, steep road, or scattered settlement. There is no busy center where visitors gather and decide they have experienced the place. Hardenburgh is not easy to consume. That is why it feels so remote. The town sits among some of the deepest folds of the Catskills, near areas shaped by reservoirs, state land, and old mountain communities. The roads can feel like they are leading away from the present. Cell service can become uncertain. Houses are separated by woods and terrain. The silence is not decorative. It is structural. People stay because Hardenburgh offers an extreme version of Catskill privacy. The same things that make outsiders uneasy are what residents may value most. Distance, darkness, space, the right to live without constant interruption, the ability to know the mountain weather by feel and the roads by memory. This is not loneliness for people who require crowds. It is loneliness for people who understand solitude as protection. The trade-off is that isolation can become difficult fast. Emergencies, winter roads, aging, repairs, and everyday errands all carry extra weight. The town asks more from people than pretty villages do. A vast, sparsely populated Catskill town hidden in forest and watershed country, lonely because it gives almost nothing to casual visitors, still loved because some lives need room more than attention. Number 1 is Newcomb, Essex County, located in the heart of the Adirondacks, near the High Peaks Wilderness and the upper Hudson River. Newcomb is the kind of place that makes the word remote feel insufficient. It sits deep inside the Adirondack Park, surrounded by mountains, lakes, forest, old mining history, and some of the most dramatic inland wilderness in New York. The population is small, the area is large, and the density is so low that the town can feel less like a settlement and more like a human outpost inside a vast landscape. This was once a mining town. The ghost of that industrial past still matters, especially around Tahawas and the old routes into the High Peaks region. Iron, titanium, rail lines, workers, company life, and extraction shaped the area. But the industry declined, and the wilderness remained. That reversal gives Newcomb its strange power. A place once built around taking from the mountains is now defined largely by living among them. The loneliness here is magnificent and severe. The roads are long. The winters are real. The night sky is dark. Mountains rise in the distance with a presence that makes human plans feel temporary. Visitors come for trails, views, and the idea of wilderness. Residents stay with the full version. Mud season, heating bills, limited services, quiet nights, aging neighbors, and the knowledge that help may not be close. People stay because Newcomb offers something almost nowhere else in New York can offer at the same intensity. Scale, silence, access to wild land, a community small enough that each person matters, the feeling that life is happening beside mountains older than every argument people bring with them. For some, that is not loneliness. That is freedom. The trade-off is that Newcomb demands commitment. You do not live there casually. You choose the distance, the weather, the limits, and the responsibility of belonging to a place that will never bend itself entirely around human comfort. A tiny Adirondack town surrounded by enormous wilderness, lonely because the human world feels small there, still chosen because some people do not want to escape isolation. They want to live inside the kind that makes life feel honest. So there you have it, 20 of the loneliest towns in upstate New York, from canal villages and border communities to Catskill roads and Adirondack settlements where winter can make the map feel twice as large. Some are lonely because industries left. Some are lonely because tourists only come in season. Some are lonely because the forest, water, or mountains keep the outside world at a distance. But people stay because loneliness is not always a weakness. Sometimes it is memory. Sometimes it is privacy. Sometimes it is land, family, water, silence, or the simple dignity of being known in a place that still notices. If you made it this far, subscribe for more stories about the overlooked places most people drive past without understanding. Comment which town felt the loneliest to you. And remember that empty-looking places are often full of reasons people refuse to leave.